Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and right alongside every week, of course, is Legends Tour player and LPGA professional Cindy Miller. Cindy, good morning.
Good morning, Ted.
Yeah, little gruff this morning, Cindy. If I have to clear my throat a couple times, I'll try to put my hand over the mic, so not to create any awkward moments. But anyways, welcome to the show, everybody, and thank you for joining us live. Cindy, let me just get the information out here real quick, and then we'll talk a little bit. Got a great show for you this morning. Of course, we're live every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on blogtalkradio.com. Easiest way to find us, go to blogtalkradio.com. Up in the search key, type Women of Golf, and that'll take you to the main page. And if for some reason you can't join us live, but you want to pick up on some of the previously aired shows, you can scroll down to the on-demand section, and they're in order from the most recent at the top and then down from there. So you're welcome to do that if you can't join us live, but we hope you can. Also, it's available for download in iTunes under the podcast section. Same thing, go to itunes.com, type in, under podcast, type in Women of Golf, and that will take you again to the program there. Anytime during the live broadcast, if you want to speak to us, you can call in at area code 347-945-5855, or you can email any questions or comments for the show to womenofgolf@gmail.com. And if you're interested, if you're in the golf industry and maybe you feel you have something that you'd like to share with our audience, you can certainly get in touch through Cindy at her email, cindy@cindymillergolf.com. And you can also reach me personally as well at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. But we thank you very much for joining us this morning. Cindy, quite an interesting weekend. Some great golf. Rory McIlroy, of course, won the Wells Fargo Championship this past weekend at Quail Hollow in North Carolina. Did you get a chance to see any, or you were pretty busy, I guess, weren't you?
I did not see any of it. Sorry about that. I was fixing golf games.
Yeah, I know. Well, if you haven't figured it out, ladies and gentlemen, Cindy Miller is probably one of the hardest working women in golf today. Plays when she can, of course, on the Legends Tour, but always up there working up in Buffalo and down in Florida and all parts. But you were at Kingsmill this past weekend, correct?
No, I was at Kingsmill in the middle of the week.
Sorry, in the middle of the week.
And then I came back to Buffalo and worked with everybody there. So Kingsmill was awesome. That was great. But I was teaching lessons in Buffalo on the weekend.
Oh, were you? Okay. Now, I know on the weekend's tournament, and that was in Williamsburg, Virginia, the winner, of course, was Minjee Lee, who won at 15 under with a total of 269. Watched a little bit of that. Didn't get to see it all, of course. But you were there, as you said, midweek. I apologize. I thought you were on the weekend, but that's right. You were midweek. Couple things. First off, you were shooting some B-roll, you said? Tell us a little bit about that.
Public service announcement for the LPGA, which they're really doing a great job. Nancy Henderson and her team and the foundation and LPGA Girls Golf USGA girls golf, I should say. So they had lots of kids there. I was not filming the girls golf clips, but I saw all the cute little kids, and Paula Creamer is going to be in that commercial, if you will, and they said she did a great job. And then they chose 4 or 5 of us, LPGA teaching professionals, to come down and shoot a public service announcement with Cheyenne Woods, talking about how great the LPGA is and how much we learn and how we're so qualified to teach people to improve their golf game.
Wow. And they're doing a lot more of this now, aren't they? Really trying to get the word out there.
Mike Wan has done a fantastic job with turning the LPGA around, not only the tournaments, but everything about the LPGA, and really redefining our brand and letting people know the value of taking lessons and hanging out with LPGA professionals, whether it be tour players or teaching pros. So it's really pretty neat.
Yeah, and they certainly have done a great, the LPGA and all of the staff have really done a fantastic job, and as you said, really expressing the brand. Now, you also, while you were there, you had an opportunity to meet one of our guests from last week, Alejandra, who was from the Symetra Tour. Of course, she was a winner on the Symetra Tour, and she was on the Women of Golf show last week, but she actually went to Kings Mill, and you had a chance to meet with her.
I did. She had tweeted me and said, where are you going to be? I want to meet you, which I thought was pretty cool, because a lot of these young players are not open. They're kind of private and quiet. They may appear to be friendly, but they protect themselves from the public, which I can't blame them, because they're really in the public eye an awful lot. And Alejandra is pretty shy, so I was surprised that she reached out to me. But it was really cool because I did meet her. I happened to see a friend of mine, Lisa Ferraro, when I first walked in the facility, and we went in the locker room, and I said, I'm supposed to go find Alejandra Linnaeus. And she said, she's right here. So I got to meet her right there, which was kind of cool. And she didn't have, she had already hit balls, and the putting green was pretty busy, so she went and practiced or worked out. She went to the workout trailer. So I went and watched her the first round of the tournament, and she's just tiny, and I can't believe how far she hits it. But she was very open-minded and very nice and very accommodating, and, she just was a nice young woman, which is great.
Yeah, and it's amazing how some of the players today, you would think by watching how far some of them hit, you would think that they would be a powerhouse in size, but some of the players, both on the men's and the ladies nowadays, they've just got their games down, and it's just a different game than as Jack Nicklaus famously said, it's a game I'm not familiar with, and even though he was a pretty far ball striker himself in his day, but it's just amazing what they're able to do nowadays, and there are some great players, and just a kind of an interesting side note about Alejandra. As I mentioned, we had her on the show last week, and just a real pleasure to have on. Very polite and very articulate. But shortly after the show, of course, Cindy and I always send out a thank you to our guests for coming on. And literally within seconds of that going out, Brett Lasky, who of course is the media coordinator for the Symetra Tour, actually messaged me back and said that she had such a great time that she wants to come back on the show. So we're going to have to try and accommodate her, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And I even mentioned to her maybe we could develop a series, and she was very open to that. So I think I'm going to try to create another series, somewhat like we did last year with the Own Your Game series, and we can use some tour players to help us, help our listeners get better and really own their games.
Right. Exactly, and we've got a couple.
I'm not sure that all of our I'm not sure that everyone that plays golf realizes how difficult it is to truly know what you're doing and be able to pull it off.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of times we get faced with sometimes having to make a decision when we're helping students. I know that you do a lot of work, and I do as well with trying to help some of those students out there. And I've got an interesting thing I'm going to share here with you just in a second. But I just want to remind everybody too. We got a couple of great guests coming up, and forgive me, as I said, I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold and whatnot here. So if I sound a little gruff, again, I apologize, and hopefully I'm pronouncing everything correctly. But we got two great ladies that are going to be joining us here in a little bit. Barbara Nuchereno, who's an attorney, and also Julie Fink, who is the president and publisher at Welcome Magazine. And they're up in the Buffalo, New York area, and they're going to be joining us here a little bit. And two professional ladies that use golf as a business tool, and we're going to talk a little bit about how they've incorporated it into their lives, and we'll even ask maybe a little bit how they do, how well they're doing with their games, among some other things. We'll talk about them as well. But I wanted to, something that I actually shared last Thursday night on the other show, Golf Talk Live, which I do myself. I asked the professionals. I had a group of a panel discussion. Of course, I have that every week called Coach's Corner. And Cindy, one of the things that I did last week is I wanted to give them an opportunity to share maybe a story or something of a student that they worked with, and just some of the things that they did and how they overcame some of the challenges. And one of the ones that I did was a CEO from a company that worked back up when I was up in Canada, and he had struggled. He was, as I said, a CEO, an executive of the company, and struggled with really three areas of his game. And you may have had some similar experiences as well, I'm sure, over the years. One of the things that he struggled with particularly was anxiety and stress. He would really get worked up, especially coming to the first tee or having to hit in difficult situations. And I want to say first off, let me just preface this, that I don't necessarily recommend doing this tactic with everybody. You have to really know your students, and I've known Brian for a long, long time. And this was on a Saturday that we got together, and I said, Brian, I'm gonna put something together, a game plan together to help you. And so what I did, unbeknownst to him, as I said, I knew him and the company very well, and I invited 12 of his coworkers to come out during the practice session, unbeknownst to him. And they were going to participate by observing his session. And the reason why I did that is I wanted to ramp up the stress a little bit. And I knew as a CEO that he deals with stress every day. And as I said, it's a little bit unorthodox, and I certainly don't recommend it for everybody because some students wouldn't like this, but I knew that he could handle it. And one of the things that I did is I had him both on the range, and also we did a few holes out on the course. I got permission from the people that were running at the time that I was dealing with. And we went out on the course, and I brought, of course, the other 12 individuals. And these were all executives from this corporation. And everything that he did, they would observe. So in other words, I created a little gallery for him. And one of the things that I did on the tee is I had him hit different shots. We created, on the range, had him create different shots and so forth of various levels. And I didn't just have him hit balls. And the idea was that he would have not only people watching, but I would also have them talk a little bit and, just do what normally would happen, you would find sometimes on a golf course. And the idea was to get him to focus on the tasks at hand and be able to block out what was going on around him. Now, certainly they weren't yelling or screaming or anything of that nature, but it actually proved to be very effective because, it caused him to focus during the different tasks that we put forth. It caused him to really tune out what was going on around him. And he said that it actually, after the session was over, that it actually helped him tremendously. Now, I'm sure you've had to deal not only with your own sometimes anxiety, and stress. What were some things that you did, Cindy, to help some of your players that you've worked with deal with that sort of situation?
I've never done what you did, and I think that's a great idea. How long was this lesson?
Well, as I said, it was on a Saturday, and it actually took place over a couple of hours. But the reason why I thought of this, I told you it was unorthodox, but the reason why I wanted to do it is, as I said, I know that I knew him very, very well, and I certainly would not do this with anybody else to that degree. The others obviously wanted to come out, and there's an interesting ending to this scenario, by the way. But so one of the other things that I had him do, he really struggled with his approach shots. He had really struggled over the years and wanted to find something to do. So here's one of the things that I did. We went out on the golf course, of course, for this part, and we found I first went up to one of the greens that had a lot of undulations in it. And we went, and again, it was on a Saturday, and they had, just let me preface this a little bit too. They had 3 nines on this particular course, and one of the 9s was not being used, so I had basically free range if I wanted to. They were doing some construction on one of the 9s, so I was able to go to a few of the holes there. But anyways, we went to one that had a lot of undulations on the green, and what I had him do, again with his entourage following him, I made him do some putts from various distances, 3 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, and so on. And then I subsequently did the same with chip shots, again, starting just a few feet off the green, 10 feet, and so on, a few yards as we went along. And lastly, I had him hit pitch shots, 25, 45, 65, 75, and 100, and so on, to the green. The reason why I did this and why I started him on the green was really 2 reasons. Number one, I wanted to give him, because I knew he was a pretty good putter, and his short game was for the most part, was pretty good. But I wanted to give him some confidence to start with. And number 2, because he did play this course quite frequently, I wanted him to be familiar with the green and what the green looked like, so that when he was out hitting his pitch shots, he knew the lay of the land, and so that he wasn't just necessarily hitting for the flag or hitting for the fat part of the green. He knew where the ball would roll and how it would handle, so that would, again, creep into his mindset and how he was going to be able to approach some of those shots. And it was very, very effective for that. And so, what I did is I had him start with the putter, work some putts on the green from various distances, do some chip shots, and then back out, in 25-yard increments out to hit his pitch shots. And again, it was a very successful format. And lastly, what I did, again, one of the issues that a lot of players have is, of course, consistency. One of the things that I did for consistency, now this was something I had done years and years and years ago, and I actually do it sometimes for myself if I get a little bit sluggish. And what I did is I teed every ball. This was back on the range now. I teed every ball up 1 inch off the ground. And of course, he was using his irons. And I had him clip the ball off without moving the tee. So in other words, I didn't want him to take the tee out of the ground. And again, and I'll explain the purpose of why I did this. And then as he would hit a few shots without doing that and accomplish that, I would gradually lower the tee until eventually it was right down in the ground, and then ultimately I would take the tee out. The reason why I did this is one of the things that a lot of players have problems with is they get too focused on their swing and on their mechanics. I wanted him to have one simple thing to focus on, and that was to clip the ball off the tee. And then as I said, as the tee got lowered, again, he would refocus on that level and not focused on, where the ball was going or what have you. And again, it proved to be very effective. And so I didn't use a lot of gadgets or didn't use a lot of, and of course at that time when we did it, we didn't have all of the technology that you have today, such as flight scope and some of the other things out there. So you had to sort of make shift with different tools. Now, have you ever had to do anything, Cindy, sort of unorthodox like that, or is that something that you've tried before, anything similar?
Well, I have to ask you another question. How long has this man played golf?
He's actually played on and off for a number of years. He's probably played, if memory serves me, now this is not to today's date, but at the time, I think he had probably played about 6 or 7 years. And
because
he would...
I think...
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
It will also depend on the skill level and the experience of the player. Because I have players use the tee in the golf course all the time. I have them use the tee in the fairway in the golf course.
Yep.
Because I don't think they're aware. They're so concerned with where the ball's going to go that they're not paying attention to what they're doing with the club that's going to move the ball. So they're giving all their power away to a ball and instead of realizing what they're doing with the club. So you mentioned that you wanted him to see the undulations in the green, so you started on the green, and that's great for someone who's aware enough to know they need to pay attention to the undulations on the green.
Right.
I mean, I think people, again, I'm not putting everyone in a category, but I think it's very common that people aren't even aware of what they need to pay attention to.
Right. Yeah, and
I think if they would stop and think about that, that would really help them get better without changing a whole lot.
Well, you see, one of the, and you're exactly right. It's 100% right. One of the things, and it goes back to what I said at the beginning of this conversation, is you have to understand. Now, this is certainly not necessarily things I would do with somebody that I had, a first-time student. I certainly would not do that. Do some of the things that I did with Brian, and as I said, I've known Brian for years. Unfortunately, a lot of corporate types, what they'll do is they don't always get out as much as they should, or they don't practice as much as they should, and so they can become very sporadic or very inconsistent. And I wanted to give him something that he could do, and of course we talked about some different drills and things like that he could do, but I didn't want to give him a lot of things to think about, because sometimes, as you know, Cindy, we get out there and we overthink the process. Much like you were just saying a moment ago, like they'll get out there and they'll start thinking about where the ball's gone or where it's going, backswing, what have you, and they end up getting really confused by the process. And what I ultimately wanted to do is I wanted to give him, since he did play this course fairly frequently when he did go out, again, starting at the green, the reason I did that is I wanted him, and we talked about it, of course, I didn't just take him out there when we talked about it, and I said, Brian, what I want you to do is while you're here, I want you to pay attention to sort of the lay of the land. It's not just about the fairway and the other part of the course. The green is very important. You need to know the overall shape of the green, because it makes a difference on how you're going to approach it. And this is something that he struggled with, was his approach shots, because he would hit the ball. If he thought the flag was in an easy pin position, he would just go right for the flag. Well, it might be easy from 120 yards out in the fairway, but if you're not exactly sure or familiar with the undulations or how the green reacts, you might hit a great shot, but the ball goes skidding past or over the green because you forgot the fact that from the middle of the green back is a downslope. And, you've hit it to the middle of the green thinking you're going to be safe, and suddenly the ball's in the back bunker. So I said you need to pay attention to these things as you go along. And the tee drill is something that I know a lot of players, or a lot of professionals, have used over the years. And I do the same as you, Cindy. A lot of times if I have a player that's very, very new, I'll actually, when we go out in a playing lesson, I'll have them tee it up even from the fairway just to give them that added confidence for hitting the ball.
Absolutely.
And I just would like to, and this is not, I promise, is not a pat on my back, but actually all 12 of the executives that came out booked lessons that day with me. So it was kind of a win-win situation. I'd never taught any of them before. Brian was the only one from that group that I'd ever worked with, and they came out and just were very happy with the results that they saw. So we actually ended up booking some sessions from there. But, we all get faced with difficult challenges, and especially in this profession, and you have to really, and this is why I think, Cindy, in my opinion, one of the number one things that you need to do, especially when you're meeting with a new student, is you really need to talk and engage with them and find out not just the areas of the game that they're looking to improve on, but you need to get an understanding of even a little bit of the personality type. If it's somebody that is an aggressive type personality, then you can be a little bit more aggressive in your approach. If it's somebody that's, you might need to work with kid gloves in your approach, sometimes you might need to back off and not pressure them too much with some of the tasks at hand. Have you got something that maybe you'd like that you can share with us as well? Just maybe some experience even recently that you've done?
Well, I've done all kinds of things like you do as well, and simulations on the golf course, but I think what you just said is the most important part of all, is to interview the student and find out what that you want to do, where do you want to go, what do you want to work on, and I think it's so much more clear evident to me now that, again, I teach a lot of clinics and a lot of people come in and they, I got to hit my driver better. And I said, well, let's warm up with your 7-iron. And if you can't hit your 7-iron straight, you're not going to hit your driver straight. So what they think they need to do and what they need to do are two different stories. So that's part of the question here is I think sometimes we do need to interview them to find out their level of experience. And then we need to guide them depending on their personality. You know, if they're quiet and shy, you know, you're going to treat them with kid gloves. If they're a little more bold, you can, you know, be a little more bold with them and say, you know, in my experience, I believe that this is the best opportunity for you today to get better. Because most people don't have a process. They're only concerned about the results of the golf ball. And they have no idea what's making that ball go where it goes. So if they don't know that, then, you know, the thing that bothers me the most is for someone to say, well, it works with you, but it doesn't work when I leave you. And I said, well, because I'm thinking for you. So pay attention to what I'm saying, because when I'm with you, I'm doing all your thinking for you. You know, therefore, at the end of the day, needless to say, I'm exhausted because I've just thought for 25 or 30 people in a day. So I'm trying to make them more aware of what I say and why I say it so they can truly learn to own it themselves.
Right, and that's exactly it. And that's really what I was trying to do with Brian is, you know, I made him, as we did each of the shots, I didn't say, okay, well, Brian, I want you to do this, and I would tell him what I wanted, the overview, if you will, of what we were trying to accomplish. But I knew, being a CEO, that he had to sort of think on his toes at times through his, and I would use that as an example. Say, you know, Brian, when you're at your company, you know, you're the one that's in charge. You're the one that's thinking through the process, and sometimes you're going to get hit with a curveball, and you've got to be able to react. So here's your curveball, and that's basically what I would do. Is I would throw challenges at him, and I'd say, okay, Brian, how are you going to handle this? And I would have him, you know, play out the scenario. And in the meantime, you know, the 12 individuals were chirping and talking, and you know, as I said, we didn't have a lot of the technology wasn't around as much, so you know, we didn't have you know, people texting and things like that as they're doing more now. But I basically had them, even on the range. You know, we went off to the far end of the range where we were, you know, private from, you know, not bothering anybody else. But I would have them talk, and they certainly couldn't yell or scream or do anything of that nature. But they could just, you know, have some conversations and just, you know, so that it was that background noise. And even though, you know, certainly in a professional tournament they quiet the audience down, there's a lot of times, you know, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Cindy, you go out on a traditional golf course, and you know, there's people sometimes don't always follow the rules, and you're trying to hit a shot, and you've got somebody in the next fairway, and they're, you know, yelling, you know, your ball's over here or whatever, and there's background noise. There's always going to be some. So I wanted him to be able to handle that. And it worked very well. He said, and nobody got fired, by the way. So obviously nobody really annoyed him too much. But it was, you know, it was in good fun too as well. But yeah, you know, I want my students to be able to think for themselves, because there's nothing worse. And you just said it eloquently. There's nothing worse than having to, you know, think, you know, for your students all day long, because you're exhausted by the end of the day. So you have to, you know. And
there's a balance there. I'm not whining, because if people didn't know if people didn't need to play better, I wouldn't have a job. But what I really want to do is help them become clear on what they should be thinking and what's going to help them improve the most. Because you don't want, you know, chatter going on inside your head nonstop and making you crazy. It's just no fun to play golf that way.
Right. And you know, the pros, of course, you know, most of them are conditioned enough through trial and error that they're able to overcome a lot of these. But they struggle too as well. I mean, there's a lot of pros, of course. That's why they have their gurus, if you will, to work with. And they're starting to understand that, you know, emotions, of course, come into play. That's the other thing, too, that a lot of people, and that was something that I really tried to get Brian to understand. I said, okay, Brian, we're on the golf course now. ABC company doesn't exist right now. So I don't want you to be thinking about, a meeting on Monday or thinking about something on Tuesday. You can do that after we're done. But while you're here on my time, and I certainly, didn't put it quite that way, but basically while we're here, we're going to have fun. We're going to work together. We're going to work through some of the challenges that you're facing, and I'm going to help you with that. But I don't want you to be thinking and I don't want, Fred over here to say, okay, by the way, we've got that presentation coming up in a few weeks while we're doing the lesson. So they all understood that we weren't going to talk shop, that we were there to help Brian out with his game, and it worked very effectively. And he took away from that a perspective, if you will, and an experience that has helped him. And the reason why I know this has sort of stood the test of time is I certainly don't speak to him every week, but we do certainly keep in touch on a fairly regular basis. And he still does the tee. Sometimes when he'll go to the range, he'll put that tee, especially if he's not hitting well. But the main thing is he's got to get out there and practice the things that you work on. And a lot of these executives and a lot of golfers in general these days just don't have the same time that maybe the professionals do to be out there hitting balls all the time. So they have to sort of work in their schedule. So you need to be able to not only help them think for themselves, but you need to be able to give them things that they can use, when they're under pressure to work through their game, and give them some tools that they can use when you're not around.
Well, I think the other thing that it's important to, instruct people is if you only play golf twice a month, and you might play in a company outing with someone who plays a lot and is really good, you think you should be able to do what they do. And I don't think most people realize the time and effort that you must invest in this game to get pretty good at it. And it takes a lifetime to learn. And so I think that, if I say to them, I'll have them use a tee at the dome, outside of the outside range, and they'll say, well, I can't use a tee when I play. And I said, well, if we were on the grass, the ball's going to be at least a half an inch above the dirt. So this tee being a half an inch above the mat is the same thing. And I don't want you to be trying to get the ball up. I want you to focus on your swing and letting the club fall. And so I think they almost have this legalistic, well, I should be able to do this. And I'm like, think again, not really.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, that we try to do is not have them worry about what somebody else is doing. Focus on your own game. And that's why, when you did the series there earlier on, own your game. Don't own Brian's or Bob's or Cindy's or Ted's. It's own your game. And that means you may not hit it as far as the next person. You may not, be as good of a putter as somebody else is, or a chipper, or have a stellar short game compared to somebody else that you're playing against. But don't worry about what they're doing. Focus on what you're doing. And that's something that I see a lot too, especially with in all fairness, with men. They come out there, well, I can't hit my driver as far as my playing partners, and I want to be able to hit it as far as them. And I say, well, what are you shooting week in, week out? And more often than not, he's beating, 2 out of the other 3. So I said, well, why do you need to hit it necessarily farther if you're already beating 2 of them? Well, it's really so-and-so, and, I want to hit it farther than him. And I said, don't focus on that other person. Focus on your game. And I said, there's other areas. Certainly, distance can help, but distance isn't the end-all, be-all, because if you look at and I've used this many times, I said, if you look at the tour players, it's they're all hitting the ball a pretty far distance. But there's a lot of players on tour that have phenomenal short games that make up for that shortfall in distance. And they're winning just as much as anybody else is. So, don't look at it that way that, that you have to be the furthest one out there. At the end of the day, it's what's written down on the scorecard that matters. How well did you do at the end of the day? And that's what you need to focus on. And, we've seen all ends of the spectrum, I'm sure, but that's basically how how I look at it is I'm going to get them to focus on their own game and not what somebody else is doing.
Well, and it's funny that you said that. I did walk out and watched Alejandra on a couple holes, and the girl who was leading, I can't even remember her name, the first day she was playing with Alejandra, and I walked up and she had about a 40-foot putt on a par 3, and she knocked it in.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, wow, that changes things. And the next hole was a par 4, and she had about a 30-foot putt, and she knocked that in. I'm like, whoa, hi, And Alejandra hit the ball just as far as her and had it inside of her on the green, but did not make her birdie. She did make one birdie, but the next hole she didn't. And then the next hole she hit a shot left. And it's almost good sometimes to go watch. Yep. And I know a lot of my students sometimes say to me, oh, I love it when I see tour players miss shots. And I hate to admit it, but it was like, okay, wow. Both of these girls are hitting the ball really, really well. This one girl is making everything. And in fact, I mentioned it to her. I said, that's more yards and putts that I've seen go in about 5 years, just in a couple holes. And she started laughing, and she goes, yeah, it all counts, doesn't it? And I said, yeah, it sure does. So, again, it might change your perspective to say, wow, I really don't have to hit the ball farther. Maybe I need to miss it better, and maybe I need to chip and putt better. How do you find shots? So,
Exactly,
anyway.
And well said. All right, Cindy, I see that we've got our guests ready to come on, so I'm just going to do a quick introduction. And, again, I just want to apologize for being a little bit congested this morning, so if I mispronounce or say anything incorrectly, I apologize in advance, but I'll do my best, and then we'll bring our guests on and talk with them about golf. Coming on the show, of course, as I mentioned, is Barbara Nuchereno. She's an attorney at Hogan Willig in the Buffalo, New York area. She's an attorney admitted for 27 years, 13 years as private practice. She has experience in estate, real estate, contract, family and matrimonial law, as well as some civil and criminal litigation experience. Has extensive courtroom experience serving as a confidential law clerk, acting referee, and also has mediated in the courts as well. She was admitted to practice in New York State in January of 1988 and was elected to the Amherst Town Board, serving from 2009 to 2013, and is a prior member of the Amherst Industrial Development Agency. Also joining her is going to be Julie Fink. She's the president and publisher at Welcome Magazine, and just a little bit about Julie as well. She is, as I mentioned, is the president and publisher. Welcome is the premium hardcover and online guide to the Buffalo Niagara region, featured in over 80 hotels in-room, and complemented by, of course, their interactive website. Editorials and photography highlighting dining, shopping, sightseeing, and the arts, nightlife, events, sports, and gaming. And advertising, of course, consists mainly of locally owned and operated establishments in the area. And links to all featured are all featured on their on her website as well. And they both, of course, have gravitated to golf and use it as a business tool. And we're going to talk to them a little bit about that this morning as we bring both of them on the air. So let's welcome them, Cindy.
Good morning, ladies. Welcome to the Women of Golf.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, and let me just say again, I apologize if I mispronounced anything. I'm dealing with a little bit of congestion here this morning, so ladies, I apologize if I said anything incorrectly. Cindy, I'll let you, since I'm trying to recuperate here, I'll let you start off.
Well, I want to thank you ladies for joining me, and when I spoke to Barb, who I've known for I don't know how long, but a while, I was really looking for a couple of women who are business women who play golf, who have families, who are very successful business women, and I really wanted to get your take on how you have learned, if you will, to, I call it spinning plates, to juggle many things. So the first question I'd like to ask both of you, and we'll start with Barb, is how long have you played golf?
Well, I started learning golf in 1987 when I was with the first law
law firm I was with after law school, and they had an annual golf outing because it was a great team-building tool to get out of the office and have a little fun and try something new. I wasn't really very successful at that point, which led me to say I need to take some lessons. So I started taking lessons and golfed a little bit off and on since then, more so probably in the last 10 years.
Okay, and how about you, Julie?
Well, I started playing golf probably in about the year 2000, and I was strictly just a 9-holer. It was just about socializing and wasn't really taking it serious. And then about 6 years ago when we joined Park Club, the women that I knew that were golf members were all 18-holers. So I was told that if I really wanted to be a golfer, you had to play 18 holes. So I stepped up to the plate, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it. My game has improved, although a lot of that is due to taking lessons, and I did go to golf school. But I look at it that, it's going to be 4.5 hours of pleasure and enjoyment. I don't take myself too seriously on the golf course. I've got enough time for that off the golf course.
Now, let me ask you, again, Barb, we'll go back to you. How do you use the game as a relationship-building tool for business? Do you do that? Do you take customers and clients out to play?
Yes. Actually, because my career has gone in different directions, I've had some really interesting opportunities in my life. It's fit in different ways. When I first started, it was for outings and charity events and things like that I would do with other people, some friends, sometimes people I worked with. It did become important in business when I would take people who I needed to talk with in my career. I took the district attorney of our county out when I was in private practice, and a couple of judges, just to get to know them and have them get to know me a little better and what they were all about, what I was all about. Then when I was on the town board, there's a lot of people who don't golf, but people who golf love the opportunity to connect and to talk. So I was asked often to take some actually pretty prominent people out golfing by other people who didn't know how to golf and knew that it would be a great tool for just maybe discussing business, discussing projects, either with the town or with the county or state when I was in government. And now I am in a business development position with this firm. This is a firm I was with in 1985. And after leaving government, when I wanted to go back to private practice, I called them because I think the world of this firm. It's a terrific firm. And they have asked me to be in charge of business development. So doing that, I'm reaching out into the community to different people, individuals and businesses. And quite frankly, there's some people who say, boy, I'd love to get together. Does anyone in your firm golf? I'd love to golf. That's my best time for talking about business, talking shop. So I'm lining things up. So as a business development tool, I'm finding that it's really starting to come in handy. The other thing for business that it's good for, too, is, like Julie said, when you're at work, you're busy. And when you're with your family, you're busy. And you rush. Sometimes I go to the golf course by myself with my clubs on my back, all alone late in the day, and it's just peaceful and beautiful. It's like either a 2-hour or a 4-hour vacation, depending how many holes you're playing. So it's great for just grounding you and just calming you down after a busy day.
You got that right, boy. That's for sure. Julie, how about you? Do you use the game as a tool for building relationships and growing your business?
I have in some cases. It's always a nice treat to get someone out and have their undivided attention for 4 hours or a little bit longer, depending on the round. But I also agree with Barb as far as these different charity outings go. It's really nice to take people out as your guest or form a foursome of business-related people that you don't normally get a chance to, sit down and chat. It's always beneficial to be able to talk about your business and talk about the things that you're doing in an atmosphere where, you're out on a beautiful day as opposed to sitting across a desk from somebody. It puts people more at ease. I think people are more relaxed And there's a lot of camaraderie that happens when you've got people out playing golf.
I think there's less distractions as well. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Hopefully people leave their cell phones in their bags or whatever, but, But that being said, it really is great because you end up kind of loosening up a little bit and people are more relaxed. I think it's just a great tool.
And hopefully is the operative word, ladies. I know, unfortunately, when I go out and play, a lot of times you'll see people out there and they're texting and they're doing all kinds of things. And I'm thinking to myself, you're out here to enjoy yourself. Leave work, at work, and don't bring it. Certainly, don't bring it home with you, but don't bring it out to the golf course. Let me just ask a follow-up question onto what Cindy just asked, or maybe a comment, and then get each of you to respond. Obviously, we know that golf is and can be a great business tool. One of the things that it's always helped me to do is, especially with new clients, it helps me to gauge the type of individual that I'm dealing with. It tells me a lot about that person that you, as you said, I think, Barbara, you have them for 4.5 hours, sort of their undivided attention. And it gives you an idea of who you're dealing with and how they react to adverse situations. So what it's always done for me is if I'm dealing with a business client, it's enabled me to be able to see, again, how they react to certain situations. Do they get easily agitated over, what might be simply a bad shot, or how do they react? Do you, each of you find it, and again, we'll go with Barbara first, do you find, do you pay attention to that sort of thing when you're playing with them, or are you just out there and having fun and don't really regard that?
It's hard not to regard it. You're exactly right. Some golf is for people who don't play, who might be listening. It can be frustrating. I've always looked at it as you have nowhere to go but up if you're just starting out. And when you're playing, some people are very relaxed. They're laid back. They cope with a bad shot or a bad round or whatever very well. Other people do. Like you say, they get agitated. They get distracted. They're not pleasant. And it kind of it really is telling a lot about a person's ability to cope, how they deal with things. It sort of teaches you how to gauge that person when you're dealing with them in the future in business. You're absolutely on point with that.
Yeah, and what I found too is I worked with a lot of people that were in financial planning and that sort of thing, and they said one of the things they always said to me was when they would entertain business clients, especially owners of companies, they could quite often see, without even having to look at their books, how they handled their business. Because if they couldn't handle the stress of a couple of bad golf shots, what were they going to do when their company was faced with some difficult situations? And
right.
So that sort of helped them. And it's true. A lot of people don't think of that from that perspective. And, again, we're out there to have fun and have a good time. But, again, if you're using it as a business tool, these are things that you have to, in the back of your mind, think. Julie, what about you? Do you also try to be observant at times, or what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I do notice that sometimes personalities come out that are very surprising. I always... When I see someone kind of getting a little crazy, a little upset, to the point of almost throwing a tantrum, I always try to make a joke of it. And because my theory is that I have enough stress selling advertising. Advertising is very stressful. You get a lot of rejection, and you have to really develop a thick skin. So when I'm out on the golf course, I don't want to have that stress. If I hit a bad shot, I just plan on my next shot and forget about the last one. And if I see somebody that's starting to fall apart, I try to just kind of coach them as far as, this is not a big deal. We don't care. We're out in beautiful sunshine. So I'm very optimistic when I'm on the golf course because it sure beats pounding the pavement, so to speak, getting any kind of rejection that you can get when you're trying to ask people for money for ads.
Exactly, well
if
said.
I can say something else about that comment, it's something people don't really like to talk about, but an interesting personality trait you often see is some people are so darn competitive that
Yes.
you can't help but notice that they're cheating. And you wonder why this very successful business person has to shave a few strokes off their score. And rarely does anyone speak up about it because you're here to relax, to have fun. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect you or your game, but it is an interesting thing to notice about some people, that ultra-competitive edge.
Yeah, I've found that too. Like, at some point, especially if you're playing in one of these tournaments or whatever, and you know that, somebody had an 8 and they're telling you they had a 6, and, at some point you just smile and say, oh, well.
Yeah, exactly. Cindy?
Let me ask you a question. If that were the case, would you put that in your computer in your head and possibly let that help you make decisions on whether or not you do a business deal with that person?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's I don't want to say that, people that kind of stretch their score, maybe they forgot or whatever, but it is a sign of someone's personality. Myself, I would rather err on the side that, I think I did have more strokes, but maybe I didn't. It's always great when somebody says, oh, no, I thought I had a 5 and they tell me I had a 4.
Yeah, well, what I do is I say, wait a minute, I'm losing count here. If I'm having a meltdown on a hole, I can remember being in Japan where I was doing the dunk it in the water. My poor little caddy had to keep walking back over to the cart path to get another ball. I looked over at Alan and his head's going down. I looked at my playing partners. I said, I have no idea how many shots I've hit. Please start counting with me. And I ended up having an 11. But I do that because I'm like, okay, so wait a minute. What shot have I got now? And I did that last week when I caddied in the U.S. Kids Golf Tournament, and I was trying to keep score for the little girl. I went to one of the dads. I said, wait a minute, what did we just have? So if you get confused, way better to say, I'm not sure what shot I'm hitting. Please help me out here. And that shows that you're totally open and honest to the truth. Yep. And that's a character trait that you want people to know about you.
I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So let me ask you, ladies, I'm going to ask Barb first. What's the biggest challenge, because I know how crazy busy you are with all your kids, and what's the biggest challenge for you in business and women and struggling to spin all the plates?
Well, for me, my husband works a lot of hours. He runs a large financial company, and he is in charge of New York State for his company. So he travels and he works long hours, and his goal is to make other people successful, to make his guys successful and ladies. So I really respect what he's doing, so I try to take pressure off him as much as possible. And I think as the mom of the family, most women do that. They try to please everyone else. We tend to be pleasers. So between making everything right at home, taking care of the home, taking care of the kids, making sure they have what they need. Like last night, my daughter suddenly remembered she needed a spirit box for lacrosse. So at 9 at night, we're running to the grocery store to get everything, and we're gift wrapping the box, and we're doing it. But also to be fair to work, I have a commitment to the people I work for, and I think it's important to work where you have a passion if you have the good fortune to be able to do that. I love what I do. So I want to make sure that I give 120% to the folks who have hired me and who I'm committed to. So just trying to always stay calm. The biggest challenge is not getting flustered. If you get flustered, then things start to go wrong. If you take a deep breath and stay calm and know in your heart everything will get done and everything will be fine, then it really is easy to manage everything. You just manage your time, unlike, and I don't want to be sexist here, but most men who aren't as much able to do so many things at one time. I schedule to the minute. I have 8 minutes to get here. I have 14 minutes to do this. I'll be here by then, and I squeeze a lot in. And quite frankly, most of it gets done, and most of it gets done on time. Occasionally there's something missed, but never anything important.
How about you, Julie?
Well, I'm pretty good at figuring out where I need to be, how much time I need to spend doing things. I'm all about my appointment book and my calendar. But one thing that I have really realized probably in the past 6 or 7 years is I tend to delegate a little bit more than I used to. Everything was about me doing it because nobody could do it as good as I did it. And I've started to delegate a little bit more, and it really helps me in the long run. It also makes my staff feel like they're contributing more and that I have more trust in them. Some things don't always get done the way I would want them to be done, but it's still okay. And, it's part of what makes my team at Welcome Magazine a team. Because everybody has their own role. And, of course, I do oversee all of it, but it really is one of the best things that I tell people when they ask for advice on how I run my business, why I'm successful, and I think delegating is a really big key to that part.
Let me ask you a question. What advice would you give to a young businesswoman who's starting out, meaning what skills and competencies do you think would be beneficial for her to work on and learn the most? Barb, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I guess going back to what I said before, I've had jobs that I've loved and jobs that I haven't loved so much. If you have the ability to do so, especially if you're going into business, try to pick something that you love, because when you love it, it's very easy to be passionate about it. When you're passionate, you don't mind working more or researching more or reaching out into the community more because you love what you're doing. So finding a business or a career that you love would be my best advice. After that, I'd have to say just make sure, I agree with Julie, your daytime or your schedule is really important. Make sure that you follow through, call people back, take a deep breath, stay calm, and just forge ahead. I think being organized is hugely important, and I think that being calm is hugely important and being passionate about what you do. If you don't like what you do, get out now. It's never too late.
Julie, what about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with Barb. I think you have to have a passion for what you're doing, especially if you own your own business, because every day is not going to be Disneyland. You're going to have issues. You're going to have problems. So you have to have a strong will, but you also have doing. And for people that are starting businesses, another key advice that I would have would be to make sure that you have a business plan, to make sure that your business plan is funded. I have seen, with Welcome Magazine, I deal primarily with restaurants and retail. And there's a lot of people that want to open up a restaurant, want to open up a clothing store. They don't put any money into the business, and they just don't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan and you don't have money to fund your plan, you're going to start out behind the 8 ball, and all you're going to be doing is trying to play catch up. You really have to be ahead of the game, and you have to know where you're going and be able to, implement decisions and to be able to do things without a struggle. And it's hard to imagine when you have this great idea of what kind of business you want to run, but it's truly integral to have a plan and have it funded.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was awesome.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Anytime.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And you know, the thing is, I think that just to add a quick note here, I think that it's great that we're seeing more and more businesswomen gravitating to golf. I mean, obviously, Cindy and I love the game, and you two obviously have enjoyed a number of years playing as well. And I think it's an important business tool, but it's also, you know, it's an opportunity to have fun, whether you play with your spouses or other friends in your social. It's a great social tool as well. A lot of people have made some great friends, and it's something that you can do. In addition to some of the other things you can do, you can go and spend 4.5 hours with some of your social friends and just have some fun and enjoy it. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and golf's a great game, and it does teach you a lot about other people, but it also teaches you a lot about life. And
it does. You know, Julie said this earlier too. There's a lot of opportunity for charity events, which really puts you in touch with a lot of the need out there in our community. So you're giving back by participating, but they also have people there that you're meeting and talking to. So it's great for reaching out into the community as well.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Very well.
Great networking.
Very well. Well, again, ladies, on behalf of Cindy and I, thank you very much for joining us this morning on the Women of Golf Show. We appreciate your thoughts and input, and we know that you have to go to work, so we're going to let you go. But you're certainly welcome to come back and join us anytime.
Thank you.
Thank
have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
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 All right, Cindy. Well, great show. Very interesting ladies. Enjoyed listening to them, and certainly they both obviously love this game and have incorporated it into their business lives as well as their personal lives, and that's fantastic. It's great to see. I'm excited to see business professionals like that doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great guest. Thank you. And thank you for tuning in today. Cindy and I would like to take this opportunity once again, of course, to thank our special guests, Barbara Nuchereno and Julie Fink for joining us today. Thank you very much for adding some input to the program. And thank all of our listeners around the world for tuning in each and every week to the broadcast. Don't forget, we're live every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just go to blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf, and that'll get you there. On behalf, again, of Cindy Miller and I, thank you very much for joining us today on the program. We will see you next week on the Women of Golf right here. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you. Have a great week.
You too.